All right, well, welcome everybody to another recording of US Law Live, the official podcast of the US Law Network. I'm Nick Roush. I'm at the Larson King firm in sunny St. Paul, Minnesota, and I'm joined here today by my co-host Jessica Dark, who's at the Pierce Couch firm in Oklahoma. How are you, Jess?
It's me. I'm here from the Oklahoma City, home of the national champions reigning NBA team. Nick, we are
Sorry.
we are jumping into playoff season. I know that everyone listening wants to know how Oklahoma City is doing. We've won our first game. Tell me how is your game going up there in Minnesota, Nick?
Oh, good one, Jess. Yeah, thank you. They actually lost their first game, so
Oh no.
but they play again tonight, so we'll see how that goes. But it's always interesting, my wife is one of those that like she doesn't usually keep track of the like regular season games. She just like wants me to let her know like when they make the playoffs, and now she's like super into it. So she's got her jersey ready. She's ready to go tonight. So
The playoffs are so much fun, especially if you're going to some of the games. I saw on Twitter people making fun of Oklahoma City because the second people walk in, we put on our free t-shirts. Um,
Yes, you do.
yeah,
love that.
people have
I
been like,
love
do they
that.
give you guys pants also? Like, what are
Oh,
you wearing to get to the stadium? And I mean, it's a blast, but I'm very excited to be joined by one of my favorite U.S. Law colleagues. We have Meghan Litecky here from the Dicer
Woo!
Taylor firm in Kansas City. Hi, Meghan.
hi. Thank you
How
for
are
having
you?
me. I'm good. I'm good.
We're
Yeah.
so glad to see you. Nick and I got to hang out at the U.S. Law annual member meeting this last week,
Mm.
but we didn't get to see your pretty face. So talk to us.
Well, I was sad to miss. I heard it was a really good event, but I didn't get to see your face at the Women's Connection in Beverly Hills.
Ah,
So
that's right.
we
We
just
just
had our little deal.
we've just been all over the place. Tell us,
Yes.
Meghan, tell us about your practice. Tell us what you're doing over there at Dicer Taylor, but also about U.S. law and how you got involved and kind of what
Yeah.
it means and does for you.
Oh, thank you. Good question.
Thank you.
So my practice is it's really all things litigation, mostly defense. I can break my practice up into my litigation practice up into buckets. It's probably 50% transportation and then 50% premises liability. And my transportation, a lot of trucking. And then my partner John Wilcox and I also represent the Department of Transportation here. So when folks like to sue the highways for negligent design or, pothole or a wonky stoplight. We do that as well. So we do a lot of brains on pavement. It's a big part of my practice.
Very, very road heavy.
Yes, road heavy, but also, the premises stuff, as you guys know, can be anything from can be slipping on a staircase to sexual assault in a restaurant or bar or club or
Sure.
something like that, dram shop. So that stuff can get pretty gnarly too. And someone once said, I think it was at a Connections event, actually, Jess, I remember said we were talking about elevator pitches, and she said, if you can insure it, I can defend it. I do like to say that because I do a
That's
lot of
great.
random like
Yeah.
line break litigation, some just the random stuff that comes in property damage. Figure it out. Figure it out.
I know you learned so much for a very short period of time, and then it
And then it's
yeah, we had a case. Jeffrey and I represented it was like an alarm company, and they had gone onto someone's property to fix an alarm. The allegation was they had left the gate open, and some
mm.
cows got out.
Oh geez.
The
Heaven forbid.
cows, yeah, the cows walked about a mile and a half, and it was getting dark, and a young girl driving just crashed right into one of these cows. The cow died, but she actually had pretty minimal injuries, very luckily for her, but got to learn all about the standards of cattle guards. And even though I'm from Oklahoma, that's actually not a part of my daily life or practice. So, what about you, Meghan? Is there something really just super nuanced or weird you've had to learn that we'd find interesting?
Oh my gosh, yes. Um I have, let me think of a good one because that is such a good point about what we do. There's so many times you're like, I didn't know this until now I know it. Um,
What about you, Nick, while she's pondering?
I'll
I
share.
have a good
Mine
one.
is we do quite a bit of work for utility companies in the area, right? So all your power, gas, oil
A
companies that
good
are in the
one.
area. And for many cases we've had in the last 5 years, a lot of it has involved vegetation management, right? Or tree trimming, is
Yes,
what's sometimes
yes.
called. And I'm always amazed when we're on inspections where we are looking at a tree and we have arborists who are talking about what type of tree it is, what species it is, the growth rate,
Oh God.
how it gets its nourishments. And then what I think is fascinating, I learned this a couple weeks ago. There
Please,
are
let's hear it.
Yes,
there
tell
are
us.
services in across the nation that are used to track um, agriculture, right? So the U.S. Department of Ag and everything, they have flyover kind of like drone services that track the parts in the country where growth is like its heaviest and where growth it's not, and it coincides with the weather reports and everything like that. And so we have had cases where we've had to prove offensively that a tree was either living or dying, right? And you can use like multiple forms of data. Like this is deep into like the annals of the internet.
Literally
And
the
like
weeds.
there are services that where you can track like how a singular tree in like backwoods Minnesota is
Oh
like growing on a 6 month basis and then die. Like it is,
God,
and
I
we're sitting
love
here like I'm on
that.
this Zoom call, I'm like, this is the most obscure corner of the internet, but it is so fascinating on so many levels. Like it's like the stuff we get to learn, right, in our practice. I don't know.
I like that. Get to learn. Get to learn.
Get to
Yes.
learn. It's a privilege. It's a privilege, right?
That
Anyway.
is something I love about what we do, even though you're like, oh, lawyers, litigators, oh, this is so hard. We do learn something new every
Yeah,
single day, and we really get to learn about it. I mean, this one's
I'm
not
sure.
weird, but I
I'm
think
sure for
about
you,
it.
Megan, it's
Yeah.
because in doing the trucking work that I do, right? I've
Hmm.
had a couple cases where they're offensively alleging something about the road or the design.
Yeah.
A very few though. I would imagine in your practice with that though, you learn quite a bit about
Yes.
design of roads and
Yes.
exits and like that stuff to me is fascinating. That's cool. Like
It is very interesting because I'm not an engineer, obviously by trade or by experience. And it's that's probably my most favorite work right now. Because the folks that work for the great state of Missouri, they're public servants, they're engineers, they're brilliant, they
yeah,
all have the letters after their names. So I get to work with these really smart people. And then I engage a little name plug here. My dear friends at SEA Limited
yeah.
are
Woo.
insanely helpful because we get with those cases, there's almost always a reconstruction piece and then there's the design piece. And I have to have somebody who understands there's design guidelines that are used across the country on how to design roads and intersections. And so I have to have nerd alert, somebody who knows all that. Um, and then what makes those cases really relatable is it's all of us travel across state highways every single day, and
Right.
terrible, terrible things happen on them. So it's very interesting to learn like why does a road curve this way? Or we have a lot I do Nick, I was seeing this more actually when I was home in Minnesota over Christmas. 36 Highway in St. Paul, I think, had more of these. Or maybe it was when I was up north. But anyways, we're starting to see more J turns in Missouri,
Yeah.
which is it feels weird when you're navigating. You're like, I don't feel like I'm doing this correctly, but there's a whole lot of science about why those are safer for motorists. And something recently I learned that I love to just say when I'm driving, my friend Adam Forrest at SEA we were talking about gap analysis. So I feel like I've got to do it this way. When you're sitting in the middle, when you're sitting to get onto a road and you're analyzing the gap in the traffic, so like car gap, we all have to, there's actual math about how much of a gap each of us drivers are going to look at before we feel comfortable before pulling out in
Yeah.
front of somebody. And then of course we don't want to get T-boned and died. So
All right.
yes,
So
you're
two
right.
things I want to follow up on. One is, are you native Minnesotan? Did
I
I hear that?
am.
Where are you
Yes.
from originally?
Oh, you betcha.
Oh, you
Uh,
betcha.
Shoreview. So the
Oh, that's great.
northeast
Yeah.
suburbs,
Okay,
yes.
got it.
Interestingly, we're involved in a case right now involving Land O'Lakes. And
Oh, that's
I'm having a
right.
lot of trouble with it because I can see headquarters from my brother's backyard. Like, ugh,
That's great. That's
people are
great.
supposed to be nicer about the butter.
The second is, where do you land on my wife and I have this debate. So I'm a native Iowan. I grew up in Iowa and I
Oh,
live in
God
Minnesota
bless
now.
you.
Um, when I grew up in Iowa, we never had roundabouts. It was like
Oh,
if you grew up in Iowa in the 1990s, it was stop signs. Like there were
yeah.
no, we did not have the like roundabout type thing. And so then I moved up to Minnesota and encountered roundabouts for the first time. And I complained to my wife incessantly for like years. I was like, like cars are moving, it's not stopping. And I think it's just like
Right.
growing up, you're like, okay, I'm gonna stop, you're gonna stop, and then like one of us will just go. But then my wife was like, well, no, because then it stops traffic. Like then it and then it creates people stopped and they could get like rear-ended. And we fought that battle for years. And now as I've lived in Minnesota for close to a decade, now it's like, okay, I get it now and I'm assimilated. But
You're supposed to just fly through, Nick. And the problem in Oklahoma is everyone is really friendly or too nice. And so you'll end up with a lot of people stopping and saying, go ahead. And you're like,
Oh,
yep.
like
no,
that.
no, you're
Yeah.
supposed to keep going. Stop.
Yeah.
Uh,
They
well,
have that
Megan,
nice, they have that nice problem up in Minnesota too. Like, oh, okay, oh, you're,
Oh, go ahead.
oh,
Like,
oh,
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 oops.
your turn. Okay.
yeah, the old ope. Megan,
Old
I know
O.
you had a prior life before you got into litigation. Tell us about your early career.
Oh, we did have a prior life. I was a prosecutor for almost 10 years here in Jackson County, Missouri, um, which is the biggest county in the state and has certainly the highest, if not the second highest crime rate. So we were busy.
Wow.
I worked in every unit because I had been there for so long. So I did everything from property crimes, like car stealings, burglaries, stealing crap from Walmart, um, up to big drug crimes, violent crimes, shootings, murders, sexual assault crimes of adults and children. And I did and domestic abuse as well. So I did everything.
Ugh.
It was cops and robbers. It was a great time to be alive.
Now, obviously, you got probably a lot of courtroom experience, but anything specific from that practice that you took with you to your now civil
Mhm.
practice?
Oh, yes, for sure. I remember when I was making the decision to leave, and a dear friend of mine, a mentor, he had previously left and went to civil defense, and I was like, I don't know if I could do it. Oh. And he said it's the same toolbox, you're just using the tools differently. So
There you
certainly
go.
all the litigation stuff I carried with me. So I was grateful to have that experience, especially as now it's so hard to get that experience. Something that I think more importantly that I took with me was I because I was a prosecutor and our offices were in the courthouse of our main courthouse here in Kansas City. So we just like lived there. So I knew all the judges really well. So when I went to civil, I was able to kind of share that information with my colleagues, like, oh, we got Judge so and so. What's he like? What's she like? Or can you call? I felt very comfortable. If you had an issue, it's fine. I know the clerk, I'll call her, or I know her assistant, or I know that court reporter. So just having that familiarity with the bench was so helpful. And like I tell people, when you go to a courthouse, sometimes half the battle is where's the bathroom and where do we park? Like we're already like all of anxiety when we get there. I already knew all that. It's like, okay, I can get here. I know where I'm going. I know how to use the elevator. And I feel comfortable in front of this person because, like 7 years ago, she screamed at me once really loud in front of everybody in the courtroom. So I know today I'm not going to get screamed at or whatever tragedy happened in that trial.
Yeah, there was a retired judge I remember once who worked for our firm when I started here, and
Hmm.
he worked on the criminal side notoriously for the first like 15 to 20 years of his career and switched it to civil. And the one comment he made, someone asked him about that, it seems like you have more experience on criminal versus civil. And I remember we're at this happy hour for whatever event, and he just looks at this lawyer and he goes, last time I remember, there's only one rule of evidence. Like, just like
Yeah.
a quick, like I don't need
Right.
to, like the substance can totally change. Like,
Yes.
and jury instructions and verdict form and evidence and everything, about it can change. But how to submit a case to a jury, how to go through that process, how
Right.
to stay with a judge, how to like that all stuff, I think transcends regardless of what you're doing.
Right.
It's fascinating.
And expect the unexpected. Always,
Yes,
preparation is key, right?
totally.
But you're never, ever, ever, especially in a trial, ever going to prepare for everything because something nutty is going to happen. And you're having that ability to just deal with it.
the quick story we had, I'll tell you that I thought was funny was we had a case that we took to trial back in October. It was Mark Solheim and I. It was a med mal trial, and it's like the Thursday after the Monday that we started. So we're deep into the trial already. And plaintiff's case in chief. Each day we had there's a Jimmy John's like across the street. So each day we had done is we had ordered Jimmy John's to be delivered to the like hallway of the courtroom. And Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, they had just like dropped the bag like at the whatever, like in the hallway and just like left a sticky note on it, which we told them to do. So Thursday, I am cross-examining an expert and I'm standing, I'm like at my podium, but I can see the like the back door of the courtroom and this dude in a Jimmy John's hat, and our Jimmy John's are like walks in, and then he like totally notices like a trial is going on, and he just like sits down with his Jimmy John's bag, and he's like intently watching. And so the judge like looks at it, but the judge is like, well, it's not disrupt, like it's just like someone coming in, right?
It's
And
public
then like
setting.
I have to focus my cross exam while the Jimmy John's guy in his Jimmy John's hat is just like sitting there loving it. It's just like, oh my gosh.
And you
You're
knew
like,
that,
you can just leave it. I'll get it after.
right?
And then
And
I
then
talked to him in the hallway, and he was like, "That was the most fascinating drop off."
oh,
He's like I was gonna stay there and watch." I was like, "Thank you." I'm like, "All right."
come all the time. There's
Yeah,
always these things happening here.
You're
Can I
like,
have
and
my
what did you think about it?
yeah. I'm like,
yeah,
were we doing
same.
okay?
Yes.
So
Uh,
Megan, but usually at this point in our podcast, we transition to something that's going on in your practice, right? That you're
Hmm.
dealing with right now, or something that maybe others through the
Yes.
network may be dealing with also. And so tell us, what are kind of some of, or maybe one issue that you're dealing with right now in your practice that you see is something that's either becoming common or something that's new that you're dealing with.
So something I wanted to talk to you guys about today. It's not a new thing, but it's something that always is evolving and rearing its ugly head in what we do. And I like this topic because when I have to deal with this, or we have to think about liability, the value of your case, the mindset of a juror, and fairness. So it gets all the things, right?
Yeah.
So in Missouri, we do not have, I'll start with what we don't have, and then I want to explain it for
Yeah.
our non-legal friends. So we do not have the empty chair defense in Missouri.
mm,
Now, what is that? So I'm going to say what it is. I want to explain a little bit about fault principles in Missouri, and then just talk about how that then transitions into how we advise our clients and what to do. Okay.
Love
So
it.
as my friends here now, the empty chair defense means you can blame somebody at trial who's not there, that this is all their fault. Not my fault. I didn't do any of this. Negligent business, driver, caregiver, whatever that wrong is, they're not here, but it's all their fault. Missouri, we can't do that. So I want to step back. First, for folks to know, Missouri is what we call a pure comparative fault state, meaning an injured plaintiff can still recover even if they're upwards of 99% at fault. So, for example, like a slip and fall, we know we're always kind of inherently there's some fault there because somebody did fall. A plaintiff can recover upwards of, like I said, unless it's completely that plaintiff's fault. And what will happen is their fault will reduce recovery at the end of the verdict. So if you get $100,000, you can do the math, you're found 10% at fault, plaintiff, you get 10% lumped off, but then the rest is yours. Versus, for example, in Kansas is modified comparative fault. So if a plaintiff is more than half at fault, so 51%,
Right.
you're not going to walk away with a nickel.
Yeah.
So take that pure comparative fault, meaning plaintiff, you can recover even if your fault is greater than 50%, upwards of 99%. To what does that mean for the empty chair defense? So there's cases in Missouri that have now forbid defendants from comparing fault for anybody who's not present at trial. So that includes a settling defendant, co-defendant, or that even includes a negative, somebody who was not even sued. And that's a lot of times what happens. So for example, I'm going to use a transportation case that I had as an example. Really tragic accident. We had a bad, negligent motorcyclist driver. He's in mid-Missouri. Our clients were a driver of actual farm equipment. He was driving a typical tractor, pulling a spray trailer. It was like a big drum that had chemicals in it. And he worked for a local apple orchard. 2-lane highway, so just one lane going each way. The farm equipment is on the shoulder, but maybe just a little bit into the road. And this is a place where everybody's very comfortable and familiar with seeing this. I mean, in this town, the water tower is an apple, so folks know the presence of the orchard.
Hmm.
Motorcyclist, he has not a proper driver's license. I don't know how experienced he was in riding. His bike was modified. He and his gal pal are on the highway. It's 65 miles an hour. They're going about 100. Plenty of sight distance, but he's going really fast. So what he pops up over a hill, he sees the tractor pulling its farm equipment coming in, which he would because it's approaching, and now I think he's realizing, oh crap. I'm not sure I have space to get around it. Even it's on the shoulder, but it's bleeding over into a little bit of the lane. Coming towards him is traffic. There's tractor trailer coming towards him. There's passenger motor vehicles coming towards him. So he's left with my dear friends at SCA LTD, help me understand this. He's left with a couple options. He's got to slam on his brakes and probably lay down his bike is his best option. Or he
Yeah.
can make an S maneuver in between the traffic. Well, that S maneuver going up at 100 miles an hour, you have to be so experienced at
Yeah.
riding to do that. And plus, he's got her on the back, which
Right.
is making it faster. If he doesn't do it correctly. Oh, the other thing to think about too is if he lays in his brakes and he doesn't lay the bike down, he just hits his brakes, they're going to go forward and she's going to push into him. And he's got to be very, very strong to hold his handlebars and not have her flip over him.
Sure.
So it's a lot of decisions to make in this instant. So what ends up happening is he tries the S maneuver, his tire hits a tire rod that's coming out of the spray trailer. They obviously go tumbling, catastrophic death. They hit the pavement. They both die on impact. So then the mother of the girl passenger sues the orchard and its driver.
Okay.
She has no fault. I mean, and I'm not going to argue that at
Right.
trial, right? Bad driver, they didn't sue his estate. I think they settled with his policy limits, which was a small policy. So at trial, it would be the mother of the deceased passenger versus the orchard. Now, we certainly would be able to tell the jury the story of what happened. They'd hear about his speeds, they'd hear about his choices that he made to maneuver. But at the end of the day, the verdict director is going to say her versus the orchard, and it's got
Hmm.
to equal 100%.
Yeah.
Now, I felt good about defending that case. However, we had a very experienced mediator, was a very experienced litigator, made a great point. He said, but you're going to ask this jury to tell this grieving mother, who is lovely, she was a lovely woman, that her daughter who just got on the bike one day and was horrible accident, they're going to just send her packing with zero. I said, and that's where we get into the emotional piece, right? The right
Right.
thing is the evidence is we were not at fault. We were
Right.
not at fault. But to think about a jury looking at a grieving mother and this other and her daughter that was not fault either, and she was on a bike that hit our
Mm.
tractor. And of course, there's little things that we had a problem with. He was in the shoulder a little bit. He was missing the triangle, even though it was like this bright red. Like, give me a break. I know this guy saw it, but of course, there's always something, right? And so we were not perfect, right? And so to ask the jury to send her with nothing would be really, I can appreciate for a jury a really heavy lift. So then it gets really dangerous.
Yeah.
So that's something, we just are. So then when I'm talking to, our clients and their insurer about, that's where we get into well, look, today the case is very early and here's how it looks. You guys didn't really do anything wrong. We have a couple issues that we need to deal with, but I got an expert, we can get out of that. But what you need to think about all the way down the road is at the end of the day, we're going to have to ask this jury to give them nothing. And that's
Yeah.
going to be really hard to control their reaction back in the
Right.
jury room when they're thinking about it.
Yeah.
And that's something I think we are always dealing with, especially in cases where maybe you have a co-defendant who settles early. Now we talk about the case, but we can't point the finger at that,
Yeah.
even if the primary at fault defendant.
That's so interesting because yeah, up here in Minnesota, we we have a modified comparative fault system, but then we we can
Nice.
try the empty chair, right?
Yeah.
I think the standard in our case law is any culpable party, right? So you just have to
Yes.
bring a motion and then you can add them as a line on the verdict form. Um, and that always, I'd say, in our discussions, even pre-suit and even, when we're at the mediation table, is about that and what do these percentages look like. I also think, and I never like to speak for Solheim, but he does a lot of mediation work right now. And a lot of
Hmm.
times what he's able to do with plaintiffs is he likes to print out what a Minnesota jury verdict form looks like and say, okay,
Yes.
let's talk about who these percentages go to and what it looks like. And it seems like it may be a little bit more different in your state, right? And maybe it's more convincing to the defense side to
It
say,
is.
how are you going to ask a jury to fill out this verdict form, right?
Right. I do that. That's a great practice for him to do. And I do that all the time with these kinds of cases to
Yeah,
say this.
smart.
I mean, I had one that was really sad, a little girl, 3-year-old, horrible bodily burns because her caregiver stuck her in a hot tub.
Oh
I
man.
think what happened was it was punishment, but we represented the water heater company. And I knew at the end of the day, the mom didn't sue the caregiver. She sued the landlord and she sued the water company. I know the water heater company, a huge nationally recognized water heater company in the United States. It was going to be little girl mom versus the water heater company at the end of the day. Of course, it wasn't this little girl's fault, and her injuries were horrible. And I want to bring in the bad caregiver, but it doesn't matter. It's going to be
Mhm.
us, little girl mom versus water heater company. And to your point, Nick, I do that all the time because a lot of times our clients are like, that's not fair. What are you talking about? And you show them,
Yep.
going to equal, I know it's it's not fair, fair is subjective, right? But I
Yeah.
appreciate when folks say that's not fair. What are you talking about?
Well, I think that's why it's so important to have your knowledge, everyone's knowledge in our specific states and regions, because obviously a
Right.
national company who is used to dealing with the empty chair or, other methods, it's very important that they retain
Right,
someone who knows exactly how it's going to play out because obviously the further it goes, the more expensive it gets. And
right.
having that knowledge early will help get a good result for everyone, or a better result, I guess.
And something I've been doing more early with these cases,
Yeah.
to the really catastrophic ones, about getting some jury analysis
Yeah.
early because it's so emotional with us not being able to blame if it's an us versus them scenario, which it often is, having another group of folks who really understand the mindset of jurors and can help us do some mocks or at least understand kind of how the average Joe is going to look at this. Because we think, I'm like, oh, come on, no one's going to buy that. Well, turns out.
Yeah, and I think along those lines too is the knowledge, like you talked about earlier, of the judges and your assigned judges of,
Yeah,
especially as it relates to, are they going to let that empty chair on the verdict form for some of us who can do that? Or,
right,
these national companies who they don't want to have to give documents from every single store across the entire nation. We should just get it to limit it. Knowing which judge you have in those circumstances is,
right,
I mean, it can totally change the entire game. You can go from a couple hundred pages of production to a million pages of production.
right.
Yeah. We see that a lot with, like, we get this question a lot with damages caps, right? So, shout out to Jack Laffey in Wisconsin. There are wrongful death damages caps, and there
Right.
are other substantive damages caps, which I think make litigating at least, I don't want to say foreseeable, but it's a little bit easier, I think, pre-suit to talk about, okay, what's our worst day at trial and where are they really
Right.
going to pad up
More
on experts and
predictable.
witnesses, right? In Minnesota, we have zero caps. So there is absolutely nothing. And now the trend is, and it's not a secret. I think in multiple states I've talked with lawyers, this is the same, where you may have a claim where the medical expenses are 20 grand. And they say, yeah, that's fine. We're not even going to blackboard the meds. We're just going to do
No.
pain and suffering.
Yeah.
And you're having to educate not just, I would say, clients, but if it's an insurance company, their insureds about that's not even remotely fair, right? I mean, how do you gauge that? But to your point, Megan, it's a lot of what we do is talking about how a jury is going to weigh this and what our arguments are, and can we prevent that from happening? Well, there's a risk usually that's associated with that. And it's an interesting shift, I'd say. I mean, I think that there are some states that are enacting legislation, it looks like both regionally and across the country to help with, I think, damages outcomes, but it's definitely not as widespread as people think it is. So,
Right. And that cost of medical care, not putting up the meds is so common. And in
yeah,
everybody knows how much medical care costs now.
right.
So even if you have something where it is maybe some chiro and some visits to your primary care, so it's not much, right? But
Right.
I, I know how much I pay for health insurance and how much it costs just to go to the doctor. So juries are already going to be thinking about, well, it must be so much money for this to have been done.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
it's a good time to, that we can't use that anymore.
Yeah. Well, to end our podcast, Megan, what do you have coming up this summer? Anything fun? What are you looking forward to?
Oh my gosh. I am looking forward to, of course, I'm looking forward to my greatest, as I call it, my greatest week ever in Brainerd, Minnesota. We go up to the
Yes.
Whitefish Chain.
Great.
You don't even know. It's God's country up there.
I have
Uh,
no idea, but I'm interested in attending.
yeah, you love it. It's all the Litekis.
The
We
Brainerd
go
Lakes
for
area is
so great.
beautiful in the summertime. It's
Oh my God.
awesome. That's great.
Maybe the Liteckis could host like a summer forum,
Yes.
and love that.
Yes, yes. So we do that every July. I'm very much looking forward to that. I'm something new we're doing my kiddos. I'm in that I'm a semi-professional um youth baseball agent
Okay, okay. I was
slash
wondering where we were headed.
influencer.
I was like, what are you a semi-pro at?
Follow me on we're so in June the Inside Edge 11U squad is going to Panama City, Florida for a baseball tournament. We're gonna
Fun.
be
That'll
doing
be
that.
good.
Hopefully not get smashed by those Florida and Arkansas kids and Oklahoma kids. Everybody down there plays a lot of baseball. But that'll be fun. Watch. And well, in Panama in the dead of the summer.
Yeah.
Oh,
Right.
lovely. Jess, what do you have on your calendar for the summer? What do you got going on?
Oh my gosh, I really don't have too much set. We've talked about it at the very beginning of this podcast. I started building a house. I personally, we hired
Yeah.
builders, but they have completed our house and now we are living in it and we have a pool. And so we are just really looking forward to staying
Mm,
home. And you know me, and you kind of know my husband, we are goers and we've barely been home since we got in, and I think that's going to be kind of our priority is trying not to go a bunch of
Fun.
places, but enjoy the fruit of
yes.
our lots of labors. What about you, Nick?
What do we have in the summer?
Take babies to the beach.
Yeah, oh yeah, we'll take the babies to the beach. So, my wife's family is all from the Duluth area, Megan. So
Oh, yes.
they have a cabin up there. So I'm sure we'll go up there and visit them. And then the pinnacle of our summer is the Minnesota State Fair. And
Yes.
so we are all building up, waiting for that. And so we went last year 3 times. So we'll probably go another 3 times this
Yeah.
year.
Jess, I'll
Um,
have you
Will you
know,
please do a TikTok series for us?
it's the great Minnesota get together. Oh,
I Jess, you got to come up for it.
it's
I'm just saying there's nothing like it. It's
Send me the
amazing.
dates, man. Send me the dates. I like the Oklahoma State Fair, but we have it in September. And
Oh,
I mean, I guess that's because
oh,
we can't do it in the summer, but it's still very hot in September.
the
right.
last the best food we had last year was the Uncrustable burger. So they
Oh,
deep fry 2 Uncrustables, and those are like the bread, and then they put a cheeseburger in the middle.
amazing.
Amazing. It was just unlike anything I've ever had before. Oh
And
God.
there's always a news story that comes out. I don't know when, Nick, if it's maybe it's in the spring, probably in the summer. It's probably June or July. When they announce the new food at the fair.
Oh, it's the
And
best.
it's like Michelin star just dropped a new restaurant or something. I was like, did you see? You
I've
see what
got
they're
some
gonna have this
old,
year?
yeah, I have my old hat. Like I want a corn dog, I want a corn on the cob, and I want one of those cute little jugs of root beer.
Oh,
Yep.
And those are like my must-haves. And then
yeah.
anything after that, I'll have a bite of, but I have to have those.
I gotcha. I gotcha. Well, Megan, thank you so much for taking
You
time out of your
guys, this
Monday
is
to
so
spend time with
fun.
us.
Can't wait to see you again at
No,
another.
I can't wait to see you guys in actual human form.
We will
Hopefully
hopefully we'll be together soon. We got more US Law events on the calendar this year,
yes.
so we have plenty of time to see it. But for those of you that need help, reach out to Meghan Litecky. She'll be available for us. We've got her contact information through the US Law
Mhm.
Network. But Meghan, again, thanks for joining us.
Thank you guys. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.